I thought I was simply doing a good deed for my mother-in-law by flying across 2 states to care for her when none of her children could. But I was completely taken aback when, after her passing, I learned that she had left her entire estate in my name. Now, her entire family, including my husband, insists that it's unfair and that I'm being selfish for hesitating to share. They've even warned me that if I don't make the right decision, my marriage could suffer serious consequences. For context, my mother-in-law, Sharon, had 4 children. The eldest is my brother-in-law, Jacob, 38M, followed by my husband, Nate, 34M, and then my sisters-in-law, Zoe and Becky, 27F, who are twins. My father-in-law tragically passed away in an accident not long after the twins were born, leaving Sharon to raise all 4 kids alone. Not only did she single-handedly raise them, but she also took over her late husband's company, stepping into his role at work. I always admired her resilience, and we shared a strong bond. About 6 months ago, Sharon was diagnosed with advanced-stage brain cancer. The symptoms had been so subtle that by the time we realized what was happening, the disease had already progressed beyond control. Everyone was devastated, but I was the only one who stepped up and committed to taking care of her. My husband, however, was not pleased. He was frustrated that I'd have to move 2 states away, especially since our marriage was already going through a rough patch. We argued for weeks, but I stood my ground. I even suggested he come with me, but he refused, saying he couldn't just leave his job. He also pointed out that his siblings could be there for her too. But, unfortunately, they barely seemed to care. At least Nate and I lived out of state, so he had a somewhat reasonable excuse. His siblings, on the other hand, had no valid reason for staying away. I called him out on his reluctance, arguing that since his job kept him traveling so often, he wouldn't even notice my absence. Eventually, he gave in, and I went to stay with Sharon. During those months of caring for her, I saw firsthand how little effort her own children made to be there for her. When they did visit, they always seemed in a rush to leave, as if they were fulfilling an obligation rather than genuinely wanting to spend time with her. It struck me as odd, and honestly, a little heartbreaking. Over the past few months, I dedicated myself to taking care of Sharon, offering her both emotional and physical support. She did have a nurse to care for her during the day, but I stayed by her side because I wanted to, not because I expected anything in return. Having lost my own mother to cancer when I was 16, I understood how painful the journey could be, and I just wanted to be there for her in ways her own children weren't. Unfortunately, her condition deteriorated as time went on. It wasn't unexpected, but that didn't make it any easier. Then, 2 weeks ago, after enduring an especially difficult few days, she passed away. My husband, Nate, had decided to be there in her final moments, unlike his siblings. Together, we handled the funeral arrangements, making sure everything was as she would have wanted. But just 3 days after the funeral, things took a dramatic turn. Since the whole family was still in town, Sharon's lawyer gathered us all together to read her will. He had already emailed the details to everyone, but he also wanted to explain it in person. I truly wish that meeting had never happened, because the moment he revealed the contents of the will, chaos erupted. To my absolute shock, Sharon had left everything to me. Every single asset, her house, her jewelry, all her valuable possessions, and the money left after covering her medical expenses was now mine. Since she had successfully run her late husband's company for years, she had built a considerable fortune. But instead of distributing it among her children, she had chosen to leave it all to me. For a brief moment, the entire room fell silent, everyone too stunned to speak. But then, as reality set in, the backlash began. The accusations, the anger, it all poured out at once. I had no interest in getting into an argument, so I left the room. But I could still hear the voices rising from Sharon's study as they continued to discuss, or rather, argue about it. Even Nate was in there with them, and while I couldn't make out exactly what was being said, I knew it wasn't anything good. Eventually, they all left without even saying a word to me. Nate, however, stayed behind and finally came to talk. He was clearly shaken, still processing what had just happened. At first, he was surprisingly supportive. He acknowledged that I had been the only one truly there for Sharon and told me I deserved what she left me. He had visited a couple of times over the past few months, but even he admitted that his efforts paled in comparison to what I had done. For a moment, I thought he understood. But then his tone shifted. He admitted that while he appreciated everything I had done, he still found it strange that his mother would leave everything to me. He revealed that he had spoken with his siblings, and they all agreed. If I wanted to be fair, I should split the inheritance evenly among them. I was completely taken aback by how casually Nate informed me that I needed to split the inheritance, as if it was a decision that had already been made without my input. It was obvious that he and his siblings had discussed this among themselves, completely excluding me from the conversation. But in my mind, there was nothing to agree to. So I told him the truth. The will was still in probate, and it would be a couple of months before I actually inherited anything. When that time came, I would think about it. But for now, I wasn't going to make any promises. That was all it took to set him off. He immediately started yelling, calling me selfish and accusing me of stealing what rightfully belonged to him and his siblings. That accusation did not sit well with me. I wasn't taking anything from them. Sharon had made her decision, and as far as I was concerned, that was her right. If anyone had the authority to decide who got what, it was her. Things escalated quickly, and soon enough, we were in a full-blown shouting match. Our marriage had already been strained for the past couple of years, which, to be honest, was part of the reason I had wanted to move in with Sharon in the first place. I needed some space from him. One of the biggest sources of tension in our relationship had always been the issue of children. Nate wanted kids, but I wasn't ready yet. His job required constant travel, and I knew that if we had a child, I'd be the one left to handle everything on my own. We didn't have any family nearby, and hiring a nanny would be expensive. As someone with a full-time job, I couldn't just drop everything to become a stay-at-home mom. I also valued my financial independence and wasn't willing to give it up. But Nate saw things differently. He insisted that we couldn't keep delaying it forever, bringing up biological limitations, while I countered that if he truly wanted kids, he needed to commit to being more present at home. His response? That we needed the money and that since I worked from home, I shouldn't be worried about childcare anyway. It was an argument that went in circles, and over time, our relationship had become bitter. Still, we kept trying to hold things together until now. After this last fight, something shifted. Nate not only called me selfish, but he also outright threatened to leave me if I didn't agree to split the inheritance. He made it clear that my decision would impact our marriage, so I had better think twice. But I was done being manipulated. I told him I didn't care what he or his siblings thought of me. That was the last straw for him. He stormed out, and we haven't spoken since. It's been over a week now. I've been staying in Sharon's house, and during that time, Jacob, Zoe, and Becky have dropped by a few times, trying to pressure me into giving them their rightful share. Each time, I've simply told them that I'll think about it. The truth is, I don't want to make any commitments I'm not ready for. I can't shake this feeling of guilt, and honestly, I don't know what the right course of action is. But one thing I am certain about is that Sharon's kids never truly deserved her. When she was sick, I was the only one consistently by her side, not because I expected anything, but because I genuinely loved and admired her. Meanwhile, her children were largely indifferent. And now that she's gone, she's left everything to me. To me, that doesn't seem unfair at all. I've talked to my dad about it, and while he understands my perspective, he also thinks that Sharon's children aren't entirely wrong for expecting a share of the inheritance. Ultimately, though, the decision is mine. And if I'm being completely honest, I'm leaning toward keeping it. It's a substantial amount of money, enough to finally start my own company, something I've been planning for years but always put off, waiting for the right time. Now, with these resources, I can quit my job without financial worry and focus on building my business. I know this decision will anger Nate and his siblings, but frankly, that's not my problem. As for Nate, I've been seriously considering leaving him. I've done everything I can to make our marriage work, but I don't think he truly cares about me anymore. I understand that relationships evolve, that the spark can fade, and that marriage takes effort. But from where I stand, I'm the only one who's been putting in that effort. And to be clear, it's not about the money. If Nate had approached me with kindness and respect, I wouldn't have hesitated to share it with him. But instead, he acted as if he was entitled to it, as if it was his automatic right. It wasn't. This was his mother's hard-earned money, and she had every right to decide where it went. The fact that she left it to me speaks volumes about how she felt. If Nate had simply treated me with decency, I would have gladly shared my inheritance with my husband, of all people. But his attitude, the entitlement, the demands, made me see things differently. Right now, I feel conflicted and, honestly, a little selfish. I don't even want to talk to my friends about it because the whole situation just feels weird. So, am I the asshole for not wanting to share my inheritance with Nate and his siblings, and for thinking about walking away from this marriage altogether? Since people wanted more context about my work, it's a proper corporate job, and the only difference is that I can work remotely. My company implemented this policy after the pandemic, but for some reason, Nate seems to think that just because I can work from home, it means I'll be free to take care of a baby whenever we have one. I'm exhausted from trying to explain to him that once my maternity leave ends, I'll have to go back to work just like anyone else. If I don't have his support, it's going to be incredibly difficult for me, which is exactly why I'm not ready to have a child right now. Nate earns more than I do, and while he's never outright said it, I can tell from the way he acts during our arguments that he thinks his job is more important than mine. He constantly accuses me of making excuses when I bring up my work, and when I try to explain that I need his commitment before I commit to having a baby, because it's not just a small decision, it's something that will affect my body and my entire life. He completely dismisses it. He tells me I'm overreacting, and sometimes he's even accused me of using this as an excuse to avoid starting a family. The truth is, I do want a baby as much as he does, but I also want reassurance that he'll cut back on work to help raise our child. If he can't promise that, then why should I be the one expected to sacrifice everything instead? That's what frustrates me the most. He acts as if I'm making this a bigger issue than it is, but the reality is that I would have to give up far more than he ever would if we had a baby under these circumstances. Every time we talk about this, we end up fighting. He storms off, we don't speak for a few days, and then when he returns from his business trips, he acts like nothing ever happened. We sweep everything under the rug, and a few weeks later, the same fight happens again. It's become a toxic cycle because neither of us is willing to compromise. But after our last fight, where he essentially threatened to leave me if I didn't split my inheritance, I've started to question whether he even loves me at all. And even if he does, one thing is clear: he doesn't respect me. That's what makes me hesitant to stay in this marriage. I can't keep fighting to make things work with someone who neither values nor respects me as a person. Update 1. I've made up my mind. I'm filing for divorce. It's been 2 weeks since my fight with Nate, and he still hasn't reached out to me. But reading my own post made me realize just how alone I've been in this marriage. I feel terrible about everything, but I know this is the right decision. I need to walk away for my own sake. Another decision that was much easier to make: I'm not sharing my inheritance. If Sharon chose not to leave anything to her children, that's on them, not me. I have nothing to feel guilty about. I was the one who took care of her, the one who stayed by her side while they carried on with their lives as if she didn't exist. And when they started calling me selfish after I told them my decision, I didn't hold back. I sent a message in the family group chat, making it clear that I would not be sharing a single thing. As expected, the backlash was immediate. They started throwing insults at me, saying what I was doing was unacceptable, threatening to take me to court. Even then, Nate stayed silent. I told them all that if they wanted to take legal action, they were free to try. I didn't care. As long as it was my decision to make, I wasn't giving them anything. That was final. Right after that, they kicked me out of the group chat, and I haven't heard from any of them since. If Sharon were still here, I'm sure she would be disgusted by their behavior. But it's clear now, her children didn't inherit any of her kindness or strength. Thankfully, I already have Sharon's lawyer on standby. She's aware of everything happening and has agreed to represent me if they actually go through with their threats. She also offered to put me in touch with a divorce attorney, and as soon as I have that set up, I'll move forward with the divorce. I wouldn't say I'm happy about any of this, but I don't see another way out. Update 2. I officially filed for divorce a few days ago. A lot has happened since my last update, including Nate finally reaching out. But it was too little, too late. My decision was already made. It's been 3 weeks since my last post, and earlier this week, before I filed, he sent me a message asking if I actually planned on never speaking to him again. And honestly, that message hit me, but not in the way he probably expected. Even now, he still sees himself as the victim. He abandoned me after our last fight. He didn't bother to reach out, didn't check in, didn't make any effort to fix things. And yet, here he was, acting like I was the one who had turned my back on him. At this point, I don't even feel angry anymore. Just exhausted. So I called him. I told him I couldn't do this anymore. I was exhausted from the endless fighting, from pretending things were fine when they weren't. I had already spoken to a lawyer, and I was moving forward with the divorce. I explained that I couldn't keep waiting for him to finally understand what I was going through, because, at this point, it was painfully clear that he had no interest in anyone's struggles but his own. Given the circumstances, the best thing for both of us was to go our separate ways. I tried to stay composed, tried to keep my voice steady, but I was hurting. I didn't want to break down, and I certainly didn't want to argue. I just wanted to end things as civilly as possible. But, of course, that wasn't enough for him. He immediately started yelling, accusing me of being overdramatic. He was convinced I was bluffing, that I only brought up divorce because I wanted an apology, because I wanted to play the victim in a situation that I had supposedly created. He dismissed my feelings entirely, calling my decision theatrics, as if I was just putting on a show. I had to interrupt him just to make it clear, I wasn't bluffing. I was serious. And that's when everything changed. For a moment, he went completely silent. Then, almost as if he had been expecting this all along, he said that he should have seen this coming, that this was bound to happen. Confused, I asked him what he meant by that. And that's when he accused me of leaving him because of the inheritance. I was shocked. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Our relationship had never been about money. I was never the type of person to be with someone for financial security, and I certainly wasn't the type to leave someone over money. The inheritance had nothing to do with this. His behavior was the reason I had finally given up. Hearing him say that, hearing him reduce our entire marriage to money, broke me. I couldn't hold back my tears anymore. I cried, right there on the phone, because I just couldn't believe that someone I had once loved so deeply could say something so cruel. And even then, while I was in tears, he showed me exactly who he was. He told me he had no sympathy for me, that I had turned out to be a horrible person, that he regretted ever marrying me. And just like that, I knew I had made the right decision. So I snapped. I told him straight up that I wasn't the one who had changed because of money. He was. He was just bitter that his own mother had chosen me to inherit everything instead of him or his siblings. And more than that, he couldn't handle the fact that I didn't know any of them a single thing. He could paint me as the villain all he wanted, but deep down, even he knew that I had every right to do what I wanted with what was legally mine. And he also knew that money had nothing to do with why I was divorcing him. It was his behavior that had finally pushed me away. I told him that if he truly regretted marrying me so much, then this divorce shouldn't be a problem for him. It was just giving him a chance to fix his mistake, and mine too. Then I hung up and blocked him. Hearing him say such hateful things about me shattered something inside me. No matter how much we had fought in the past, I never expected this from him. This wasn't just another argument. This was something uglier, something I had never seen in him before. But now, I couldn't unsee it. And honestly, I don't even care anymore if people think I'm the bad guy for leaving him. I don't care if anyone finds the timing of my divorce suspicious, because, let's be real, they will. My family won't say anything, but his siblings? They're definitely going to make a spectacle out of this. I'm mentally prepared for that. But in the end, their opinions mean nothing to me. I have been patient. I have tried to be understanding. But the truth is, they never cared about their mother while she was alive. And now that she's gone, the only thing they can talk about is her money. It's pathetic. Update 3. Nate was officially served with the divorce papers. And, of course, he must have told his siblings, because for the past 2 days, my inbox has been flooded with hateful messages from all of them. It's almost funny how, before the inheritance, they were all too busy living their own lives. They barely even kept in touch with each other. But now that they have a common enemy, suddenly, they're acting like the closest family in the world. Actually, mob mentality would be a more accurate term, because all they're doing is ganging up on me, trying to make me feel guilty. I don't even know what they think they're going to accomplish by doing this, but I refuse to let them get to me. Jacob and the twins have thrown every insult in the book at me. Their messages range from calling me selfish to manipulative to a drama queen, you name it. But I didn't respond. I didn't argue. I just blocked them all. I've still been staying in my mother-in-law's house, which means that aside from Nate, we're all in the same city. That's the one thing that concerns me, because even though this house is legally mine now, they still know where I live, and I really don't want them showing up to harass me. Given their behavior lately, I wouldn't put it past them. So far, They've limited themselves to sending hateful messages. But now that they've all been blocked, I can't help but wonder if they'll take things a step further. To be safe, I'm increasing security around the house, upgrading the technology since Sharon was never big on that kind of stuff. If they do try anything, I have my lawyer on my side, and I'll make sure they face the consequences. As of now, there's been no indication that they plan to contest the will, but I'm prepared for that too. Honestly, I'm exhausted from constantly worrying about all of this. I feel emotionally drained, but I know I have to deal with it, so I'm handling everything as best as I can. Thankfully, I still have my dad and a couple of good friends supporting me, and that alone makes a world of difference. Right now, I'm just grateful to have anyone in my corner because, at this point, it feels like everyone else has turned against me simply because I refuse to be their doormat anymore. Update 4. Hey, I know I've been inactive for a while, but so much has been happening in my life over the past few months that I just haven't had the time to post an update. But now that I finally do, let me fill you in on everything. First and foremost, my divorce has been my biggest focus. It's been taking up most of my time, but thankfully, we've made significant progress. We've already gone through mediation, and everything has been settled. If all goes according to plan, the divorce should be finalized in about 3 months. Nate, of course, tried to get a piece of the inheritance. He did everything he could to paint me as the villain, but my lawyer and I weren't having any of it. In the end, I don't think he wanted to drag this out any longer than necessary, so he eventually let it go. I'm sure he still hates me, but honestly, that doesn't matter anymore. I've realized something. Nate stopped loving me a long time ago. I was the only one still holding on. And now, it's finally time for me to let go too. And just like that, everything fell into place. I've officially moved into Sharon's house. Since that meant changing states, there's still a lot of red tape I need to work through, but I'll get it sorted eventually. Last week, I took another big step. I finally handed in my resignation. I'm fully committing to starting my own business, and if everything goes according to plan, I'll be up and running by next year. Fingers crossed that things go well for me. On another note, I've been lucky enough not to be harassed by Nate's siblings since my last update, at least not personally. They did try to contest the will in court, but thankfully, that attempt went nowhere. I think the rest of the family talked some sense into them and convinced them to stop wasting their money. By family, I mean the relatives Sharon was actually close to. They've reached out to me in the past, and unlike her own children, they've been incredibly kind and supportive. They also made it very clear that they were disappointed, if not outright disgusted, by how Sharon's kids have behaved. They knew that when she was sick, I was the one who was always there for her, while her own children barely made an effort. Ironically, Sharon's kids exposed themselves. In their desperate attempt to paint me as the villain and turn everyone against me, they ended up making their own family realize just how selfish they really were. They even went so far as to claim that I hadn't actually taken care of Sharon, that since she had a nurse, I was only there to put on a show and make myself look good. But that backfired, because the people they were trying to manipulate were the same ones who had regularly visited Sharon while she was sick. They knew the truth, and they defended me. Apparently, they gave Sharon's kids an earful, so much so that it actually brought them to tears. And honestly, I'm beyond grateful for that. I have no doubt that their intervention is what stopped Nate's siblings from taking things even further. If they had dragged me into a court battle while I was still dealing with my divorce, I don't think I would have had the emotional energy for all that drama. But that's over now. Everything has worked out. And from here on out, I'm focusing on the future.